as the program ends, I would strongly recommend you consider purchase of this wonderful cookbook, and it's in the back of the room. Helen, who is our author, will be signing them in the front of the room, but you go to the back of the room to buy the book, bring it up here, and she'll be happy to sign. I'm honored to introduce Helen Nugent, and first I have to tell you, she unfortunately does not understand American pies well. She is a Canadian. But Canadians, I did not know, you have special kind of pies for each of your provinces. I learned a little bit about one of them, but we'll get to that. She is a renowned pie artist who teaches popular pie making workshops. She is the author of 2 books, including Pie Style, which earned a star review by publisher Wiggly, which is a pretty big deal. And she's called the creator of Instagram's Most Stunning Pie Crusts by Better Homes and Gardens magazine. Helen is the contributor for the Food Network and has been featured in Taste magazine, Better Homes and Gardens, and on social media accounts around the world. Helen, come on up. She's going to sit down and we're going to talk pie. And as you all know, it's a very delicious topic, right? Okay, so the number one question we're going to ask Helen and every pie baker is, what's the secret to the crust?
Yeah. First of all, from that little quiz, I know nothing about pies. There were some good questions in there. The secret to a dependable pie crust or a really flaky pie crust?
A dependable pie crust.
Here it is. Get yourself a food processor and make the pie dough in the food processor. The biggest problem that people have when they're making pie dough is they handle it too much. Their hands are warm, they start to melt the butter starts to turn sort of liquidy, and then when it mixes with the flour, because it's a liquid and there's protein in the flour, it creates gluten strands, which are like, you know, when you need bread dough, you need it because you want to build up the glutens, so you get that springy kind of, you know, texture to your bread. You don't want springy for your pie dough. It doesn't actually give you springy, it gives you tough. So you don't want those gluten strands. They're weird little, like if you look at it under the microscope, they're just these long, sort of stretchy. And the more you knead it and handle it, the worse it is. If everything goes in a food processor, you're not touching it with your hands. Doesn't mean you have to put your food processor in the fridge or anything. Yes? Yes, you can also use a mixer. Same thing. Exactly, I was going to say. So you can use a KitchenAid, you just pulse. So it's in the book. It's really, really simple. You're literally, all the things that you have to keep cold is you have to keep your water ice cold and you have to keep your butter really, really cold, okay? So you dice those and keep them in the fridge until you're ready to use them. You don't have to put your flour in the freezer, your food processor in the refrigerator, any of those crazy things. It's a very simple recipe, and you just pulse. And you're going to think like this, no way this is going to turn into pie dough, and it does. But the other secret besides your food processor is get yourself a weight scale. Now my publisher says Americans don't use weight scales, they don't like to do things in weights, they like to do them in volumes. I don't believe that's true. Because by measuring things by weights, you're going to get the recipe that the author intended you to make. Because we always develop them by weights, and then they get converted into cups. And cups and teaspoons, all of those things are not an accurate way to measure baked products, because sweets are a science. Savory, you can throw in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but with the majority of baked goods you made, you want it to be as accurate as possible. So if you weigh your water that has to go into that pie dough and you make sure you add it all in just in 5 increments, you're going to get that pie dough that everybody else gets. And if it doesn't work or another recipe doesn't work and you've done everything by weights, then you can write the bad review. Because they didn't do their job. And it's the most accurate. You can also, you know, increase or decrease it, scale it up or down the recipe, because you're going by weights. Much easier to do when you're trying to take 2/3 of a cup up by 50%, or, you know, the math doesn't always work, so.
Now, I have lots of pressing pie questions.
Yes, okay, that was just one.
I like to think of myself as a modern person, staying fairly informed about food. Well, we all have to because we all have to consume it at some point. But I am so confused. There are hand pies, there are turnovers, there are empanadas, there are fry pies. Can you please possibly clarify for me the difference between all of these types of what I would say are pie?
Well, they're all from different countries, so there's always a different style that people use to make them. But turnovers are just hand pies that are turned, into a half moon shape, essentially. So they're the same as hand pies, which sometimes are circles, sometimes they are the half moons. So those are essentially the same thing. Empanadas, I don't make empanadas, but are they deep fried? Why do I think they're deep fried?
Sometimes, sometimes they're baked.
Sometimes. Yeah, I think there is a healthier version, but I think the traditional is deep fried. So that's in lard. Yeah, and there's a big difference in terms of what you make, of course, make it out of, whether it's butter or lard or shortening. But those are kind of the differences. It's just, most of them are just traditional pie dough, kind of made to look different, give you a different look.
Okay, last night we went out to dinner, my husband and I. We went to a very well-known Amish restaurant, and I ordered sugar-free apple pie. It was arguably one of the worst I have ever eaten. Is there a secret to making pies healthier?
I mean, I'm not diabetic or anything, so this is easy for me to say, which is, if you're going to eat dessert, eat dessert. Like, eat it the way you're supposed to. Enjoy it. Don't, maybe eat it 3 times a day, but eat dessert the way it's made to. It's really hard to make pies without sugar. There really isn't. And then you're putting in all the artificial sweeteners and aspartame, and I've never come across one that I can't taste it in the pie. You can always just taste that little bit of chemically. Now, not to say that you can't get used to that, because after you have it for a while, you can get used to it. But pie's not the worst thing you can eat from a health perspective. It really isn't. I mean, you can make pies if you want with whole wheat, all different types of grains. You may have to adjust what the measurements are of those flours that you're using, but you can definitely use healthier flours in there. Butter is probably the healthiest out of kind of the 3 traditional ways to make pie, which is butter, lard, which is pig fat. There's nothing healthy about that, but it is really delicious if you've ever had one of those old school British pies. If you've been to Britain, they are fabulous. And then you've got your vegetable shortening ones, Crisco, and they tend to be sort of more trans fat. So you are getting a bit healthier. So I would argue that pie isn't the worst thing you could eat, really. And it's got vitamins in the fruit.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I have actually. Yeah, so monk fruit is a good example of something you can kind of mix in as, again, a natural ingredient. Do you mean the liquid? There's a concentrate, or the actual fruit itself? The powder. Yeah, the one that they say is there's a liquid version of that as well. I haven't tried the powder. Do you find it's?
I haven't tried it in a pie.
Yeah.
I have several baking mixes for cooking.
Yeah, it does. And you don't get any of that aftertaste to it. I'll give that a go. Yeah. I mean, certainly if you can't eat sugar, you have to stay away from that. That's probably a good alternative. Just try and get something as close to the taste of sugar anyway.
Personal question. What's the most challenging pie you have ever made?
Oh, most of the ones from Pie Style. My first book, which I started with decorative pies, very highly decorative pies. So those pies were, the fillings were great, but filling is filling, really, right? I mean, there's nothing very complicated about a fruit pie filling. It was more in the decoration, so coming up with ideas of creating a different look, like decorating them as wreaths and as Christmas presents and as, things that took a long time, but that were a real labor of love. I would say those were the hardest to make. Meringue can be challenging, for sure. If you're making it on a hot day, forget it. It doesn't matter. But I tend to make it as Italian meringue, which really helps because it stabilizes it. I don't know if anybody's made an Italian meringue, where you heat up the egg whites and the sugar, melt it down. It's very steamy, and then you add it to the bowl and whisk it. It gives you a super fluffy, very stable meringue for tops of pies. So those would be kind of the two things I would say.
What's your favorite thickening agent for fruit pies?
Oh, I love tapioca flour because I find it has no taste. It adds a bit of gloss to the flour. I find cornstarch and flour, I can taste it. Maybe I'm looking for it, but I can taste it a bit. Where with tapioca flour, which you can buy pretty widely, and I think Bob's Red Mill has it, is tasteless, but it's a really good thickener. It's a very good thickener. Yeah. It's just ground down into the flour. So you know how you can buy the little pearls? The problem with the pearls is I find they don't always melt into the pie, and it doesn't distribute evenly the way the flour is just exactly the texture of corn flour or flour. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. But a little tip on the thickness of flour, or the thickness of your filling. A lot of people say, like when I make a peach pie and I cut into it, it's really watery because there's so much water, and sometimes even with apples, depending on what you make. This is an extra step, but it is kind of good to do, is mix up all your ingredients for your filling, put it in a sieve over a bowl, then make your pastry, give it about a half an hour. All the liquid will drain, or a lot of it will, from the fruit itself and from the sugar and everything else will go into the bowl. Throw that in a little pot over a burner and heat it up, and it'll thicken up really nicely. It's almost like texture of a thick pudding kind of thing. Then let it just cool a little, and then fold it back into your fruit. That way, when you put it in your pie shell, all that juice doesn't sink into the bottom of your pie shell and get the dreaded soggy bottom. Yeah, you can avoid that. And it also tells you how thick your pie is going to be, so there's no surprises when you cut into it. But leave that pie for 3 hours. Everybody wants to cut into it after an hour or 30 minutes, and it really does take 3 hours for a pie to set properly. I know when your family's staring at your pie, it's like, when do we get to eat it? But
Wow.
yeah.
That would never happen in our
No.
house. So let's talk about toppings for pies.
Yes, my favorite toppings are just generally.
Just general. Tell me
Generally?
what we need to know about
What do you
toppings.
need to know about toppings? Well, you've, of course, got your pie dough toppings, and you can do all sorts of really pretty decorations on top of a pie that don't have to take a lot of time. If you've got little cookie cutters, just if you want to give it a little extra pizzazz, just cut out a whole bunch of those little cutouts and put them on top of your pie. If they're little leaves, just bend the pastry a little bit so they've got a little bit of dimension, and pile them all up, and they look like a beautiful little pile of fall leaves on your pie. Then put your pie in the freezer and freeze it. For some reason, when you put decorations on a pie, it works so much better if you freeze it. Once it goes into the oven, the decorations actually hold their shape. If you've ever done braids or embossing, and then it just all kind of melts in the oven, is just, if you can, another step of course, but just freeze it first, and it'll hold its shape. So, I would leave it overnight if I could, like really, really freeze it, but an hour if you're pushed for time.
Now, wait.
Yeah.
I was not thinking cute little leaves. I was thinking whipped cream,
Whipped cream,
ice cream.
that's you can, yeah. Whipped cream's beautiful. A lot of people wait till the last minute. You can certainly do it earlier. If you leave, I think we call it icing sugar. I think America's is a powdered sugar. Yeah, powdered sugar has cornstarch in it, so it helps to stabilize the whipped cream. So if you don't have, if you want to just use granulated sugar, it tends to not stabilize it as well. But just by using powdered sugar instead of sugar, you'll help to stabilize it a bit more. And then meringue, which is my all-time favorite. Like I say, if you have a chance, there's tons of Italian meringue recipes online, but it's a really, you won't get the weeping, and you don't get where it pulls in from the sides, and you end up with just a little blob of meringue on the top. So, yeah.
What can you say about meat pies, fish pies,
Oh, I
chicken
can say
pies?
lots. I love them. When I went to write this book, I pitched the idea of doing small pies, to the publisher, and they said, okay, so like a book of sweet pies, and I said, oh, I need to make some of these savory because I love different types of savory pies, and I think they make a really nice dinner. And if you can make a small one, it doesn't have to be expensive because meat is expensive, fish is expensive. So they said, go ahead. So the book is actually half and half. This one pie style was probably 1/3, 2/3. But it does have a lot of savory recipes in there and does have fish pies and non-traditional. So I do like a Moroccan lamb pie which is really nice, and it has potatoes on top. So it's one of those Boston cream pie things for savory. Not really a pie, but still has a name. So I love pies. I would say if you're going to do a meat filling, again, if you can, put it in the fridge overnight because those flavors are going to be 50% better the next day. Like, it's amazing the way that the spices and everything just come together, and you really do get a much more flavorful pie. Just take it out of the fridge and then put it in your pie shell. But I know we don't all have time for that or that organized. It's not like I am either, but...
Speaking of fridge, let's suppose you're single or in and out, your family's not around, and you make a pie and you put some of the leftover pie in the fridge. What's the life expectancy of a pie in the refrigerator?
If you want it to be exactly like the day you made it, it's not going to happen. Like, pie is really best, eaten the day that you make it. But two days, certainly. If you wrap it, you can keep it, the leftovers. After that, it does tend to get a little soggy, but I'm still going to eat it. Worst case, pick the fruit out or the middle. I hate throwing things out, which is why I wrote this book. But yeah, I would say 48 hours.
Now, I got to tell you about my grandmother. Remember I told you about my grandfather. My grandmother would make pies, more fruit pies than anything, two-crusted. And she would assemble the whole pie and then wrap the thing and insulate it like I've never seen. And she literally had shelves in her deep freezer with pies. So how much can you pre-make a pie? How long should you leave it in the freezer? Are there certain ones that you should pre-make and others not pre-make?
Yeah, obviously a meringue pie isn't going to freeze very well, but any fruit pie, I can't think of one that you couldn't do this with, is you can make the whole thing. Just double wrap it, put it in the freezer, just like your grandmother did. They say 3 months, but I've left mine 6 months. If they're really well wrapped, or if you have one of those suction things, that takes all the air out of your the little bags, those are really good, and you'll easily get 6 months out of it that way. So if you're making a pie, sometimes it's easy just to make, 2 or 3 if you're making a bunch of them, or if you're making little ones, it's even easier. So yeah, there's absolutely no issue with that. But
Are there certain
curd pies and stuff
I was
don't.
going to say, are there certain things that you shouldn't? I mean, could I do that with chicken? Can I do that with
Oh, meat
fish?
pies, definitely. Yeah, fish, no. I wouldn't do fish just because I think it would overcook. Because you have to cook it then from frozen. So over the time, I would be a little nervous that that's going to you're going to end up with tough fish. And curd pies don't tend to do very well, or pecan pies. Well, pecan pies actually aren't bad. No, they're not bad. I take that back. I've done those before. But yeah, nothing that has meringue or obviously whipped cream on it is going to work.
So apparently the nut manufacturers have gotten more aggressive. Do you guys know this? You can go into the store and now buy walnut crusts, pecan crusts, all sorts of different. I've bought an almond crust. Do you have any recommendations about nut crusts?
In the book, there's a pistachio crust, which is just you just grind up pistachios and work them in. I love nut crusts, like anything, almonds, walnuts, pistachios, but you don't have to go out and buy the specific brand. You can make it yourself, just flour, and then you add in whatever nuts you want. So with the pistachio one, if you do it by weight, you just take out those pistachios and you can do it with almonds. Some people put in a little bit more, like a little bit of almond extract if they really want the pie dough to zing. But mainly when you want your pie crust kind of to be second to the filling. You know, you want it to complement it, but you don't want it to, this is shaking the head. No, I want my pie crust to be everything. The crust is delicious, but sometimes it can overwhelm the pie. You know what I mean? Like if it's really almondy and then you've got a strong filling. It's like people say, oh, do you just make pies with butter? Well, no, because sometimes there's a really good reason for making a Crisco pie crust. If you want to, you know, be the pie hero where it shatters with the fork, that Crisco's going to do that for you. But also, people look at it as a negative because it doesn't taste like anything, but sometimes that's good. If you've got a really flavorful filling, you just want the mouthfeel, you know what I mean, from the pastry, from the pie dough, and you want the filling to shine. So there's certainly uses for all different kinds of pie doughs.
Speaking of forks, in my husband's family, they have an ongoing debate. What is the proper utensil to eat a pie with? My brother-in-law would argue that it is a spoon because you have to have ice cream or whipped cream or meringue. And my other brother-in-law insists that it's a fork because you have to get the fruit. So do you have a particular answer here? Or is there a
I'm a
proper?
fork because I don't eat anything with the pie but the pie because I can't, no ice cream, nothing can touch the pie. I know, or cheese. My husband loves cheese on an apple pie. So I would be a fork girl for sure.
Speaking of your husband, now he has got to be one of the most, lucky gentlemen in the world to have a wife that loves to make pie. What's your husband's favorite pie?
It would be pecan pie. Yeah, pecan chocolate to be precise. Yeah, but anytime he can, I make that for him. He's a happy boy. Yeah, he loves it. He loves apple pie. He shot all the photography for this book and the first book, so he's eaten a lot of pie. He's eaten a lot of pie.
I hope he has a long life.
He cycles a lot.
So now you've spent 25 minutes listening to my pie ideas and thoughts. Do you have specific, Laura, you're in the back raising your hand. What's your pie question?
You were talking about like putting the fruit in if it was too wet, making it soggy and stuff.
Right.
I don't know much about pies, but there's pie beads and pie burrs. Do you use any of those?
The little clay pie beads, they're fine, and if you have them, use them, but you don't have to go out and buy them. They're expensive. Just get some rice, some brown, parboiled rice, and put crumple up a piece of tin foil or wax paper, or like parchment paper, and then it'll fit, nicely. If you just try to put a piece of parchment in your dish, it's not going to get into all the corners. This is if you're par baking a pie crust, where par baking means like you want to cook the pie shell before you add like your custard filling. So instead of the beads, I just say use rice, use stuff you've already got, because the rice you can use over and over again. Just put it in a Ziploc bag or a container, and I think I've had my rice forever. Just keep using it. For the steamer, like as a steamer, I know they're adorable. They are so cute. I use my mother's one just because I love it so much, and it reminds me she used to make steak and kidney pie, and she always had that pie bird in it. They're fine. They're just vents. You have to, when you bake a pie, you have to let it vent. If you don't let it vent, it's going to either the lid's going to blow off, it's going to crack, all the filling's going to come out the side. So you've got to give room for that steam to escape. So yeah, some people turn little icing tips that you use for making frosting, like to decorate a cake. They just put those in the middle of the pie because they've got they're kind of in a really good shape. They give you that little steam thing if you want. But just a couple of vents, and if your pie is very decorative and you don't want to slash it, just put your vents underneath your decorations. Like, it's still going to steam. It's just it's not going to be as noticeable. So, yeah, but I do love those birds. Yes. You don't need to, no, because it's in there long enough. The thing that people worry about the soggy bottom with pies is I would say when you heat up your oven, put a cookie sheet in there right away. Put your ancient-old one in there and let it heat with the oven so that it's super hot, so that when you put your pie plate in and it sits right on that sizzling, it already starts to bake the bottom of the pie, just enough that it stops it now, the liquid from sinking into it. So, and it also protects your oven. So it does double duty. Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Between baking in a glass versus a ceramic or some type of a metal?
Right. Good question. There's so many beautiful ceramic pie dishes, like the Emile Henry line of pie plates are absolutely gorgeous. They're going to make a very, very small difference, and they're very expensive. To be honest, the best pie plates are aluminum because they conduct heat the best. So I really like the USA pans. You know, do you guys know those? They make cookie sheets and pie plates, but they're pie plates. They're really heavy, and they're a really good conductor of heat. So those I would say would be my favorite. But no, you don't have to spend $1 million on pie plates because it really doesn't make that big a difference. Sorry, I missed you.
My question was, every time I make a fruit pie, it boils over.
Right.
And I didn't know whether to put the fruit pie on top of the cookie sheet, or put the cookie sheet one shelf down so that it drips onto the cookie sheet. But I can put it right under.
Put it right under it, yeah, and heat it before, yeah, here, because it'll start cooking. If you're filling, and people always, it ties into the question of, you know, when do you know if a pie is done? I would say that the biggest sin that people commit is they take their pies out too early because they're afraid they're going to burn the pie crust. It's really hard to burn pie crust. Like, it'll go dark brown, but turn it charcoal or black, you have to leave it in there for a good 2 hours. So don't be afraid to just leave your pies in there and let them do their thing. If you've done things like leaves on top and those are browning, just take a little bit of tin foil, scrunch it up and put it on top of that area. Like, you have to come back and do a little surgery every now and then on your pie while it's in the oven. I wouldn't say just put it in the oven, walk away, and come back when your timer goes, because things happen in there. It's crazy. I always say when I put my pie in, I always say, behave yourself in there. I find that really works. But you can I think it's all those little tricks that sort of help. But you are going to get overflow. Overflow is usually because you have too much filling in there too. But that's okay, if there's such a thing as too much filling. Yes.
Back to the soggy bottom.
Yes.
Half the pies I have all this trouble with. I've never tried the pie sheet.
Yes,
I'm gonna try that.
for sure.
Are you guaranteeing that if you put your apple pie on that, it's not?
Are you coming after me if it doesn't work?
I hear other people talking about it too.
It's one of the ways that you can certainly do it. I'd say the best way to avoid the soggy bottom is to do the draining, all the ingredients. So mix up everything that goes in that pie, all your filling and everything, and then just put it in a sieve. Because by the time you make your pie dough and get everything else organized, it's drained enough that you just put it in the pot, medium heat, just keep stirring it with a whisk, and it's going to thicken. And then just fold it back in. And now it's almost like a very loose gelatin, like the texture you want for a pie. So you can imagine now putting that into your pie crust. You don't have all that liquid. And especially for peach pie. I find peach pie is the worst for that. Yeah. Yes?
Any secrets for making a decorative, keeping the pieces that you put on, like use a cookie cutter cut out of, and you're gonna put that on top of how do you get it to stay?
You know what? If you're using butter, you don't need to do anything because the butter's going to soften up and cling. I very rarely use like egg wash or anything on decorative pies because I find the butter, but you can do just a little bit of water or egg wash. If you are going to do lots of decorations on your top of your pie and you're using butter, I would say don't egg wash it because it's already at different levels, like on top of your pie, so some things are going to brown faster than others. So if you egg wash it, it's going to get really dark really quick. So, yeah.
Okay, what about storage? Any great ways to store pies? I mean, should they be in those pie container things that Tupperware makes in the refrigerator? Should you, how do you store this thing?
Put some saran wrap on it, some plastic wrap, and put it in the fridge. There's the Tupperware containers and everything. They're nice, like the pie Tupperware containers. They take up room in your fridge. Like, you're not probably going to bake a pie and put the whole thing. It's always your leftovers, right? So I just put them on a plate and make sure it's like properly covered, that it's not open to the, smells and moisture of your fridge. But
Now, let's suppose you were living in Toronto and you had to come to Hudson, Ohio,
that would
and
be
you wanted to have a piece of pie on your way. Are there pies that are more suited for portability or for travel?
Oh, fruit pies for sure. Anything that's got a top to it. I would be nervous traveling with a meringue or a cream pie, obviously. But you can bring it, if you're going to somebody's house, you can whip the cream when you get there, kind of thing. Most people don't object to that. Meringues are tough for that distance. So I would really say a pie, like a fruit pie with a top to it, and then just put it in a cake box. Like wrap it and put it in a cake box so it doesn't get like bumped around in your car on the way.
Well, I'm
any
thinking
box you've got.
holidays. Think about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
How
yeah.
many of us take pies to somebody's house?
Yeah.
So-
There's those pie cases you can buy, and somebody sent me like a pie box, but I find by the time you get that out of your storage, dust it off, I use sometimes those cake caddies. Those are good too. If you've got those, that you use to transport cakes, those are really good for pies as well. And they're good for storage too, if you keep it on your counter, which some people do.
I love all of the recipes with the savory and the sweet and stuff. What do you think about like the Pillsbury pie things? What's the difference between those that are already made? Is it the cost making it yourself? Are there big differences in the quality?
That's where I think the health question comes in, because they're made with a lot of saturated fats, vegetable oil, and a high sodium level. So you're not able to control any of those things yourself, and they've got preservatives in them as well. But that's said, I mean, I love really stuff like that too. I love Pillsbury cinnamon rolls and all of those things. So, if you're starting out making pies and pie dough makes you really nervous, go get your Pillsbury. It's not going to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, try it. Try different ones. But if you can just look at the package and try and get something that has mostly, natural ingredients that we can find, in our everyday lives, I think that's the ideal. But try it in the food processor, honestly. You'll be amazed. Yes?
Have you used honey or maple syrup as a substitute for your granulated sugar?
Not completely. I've used it as an element, but I have not done it completely, because it is a liquid too.
Really?
Yeah,
See, I've done pecan pies with maple syrup.
just with maple syrup.
Just with
no
maple
brown
syrup.
sugar at all.
None.
And how does it thicken enough?
Yeah,
You feel
it
it?
did.
Yeah.
It did. But some of you may know, my husband makes maple syrup, so I have this never-ending supply.
We're coming over.
So I thought that pecans would go really well with
Yeah,
maple
for
syrup,
sure.
and they do. It was a very good pie.
Oh, that's interesting.
But
I'm going to try that. I gave you so many good tips on this trip. It's fabulous.
that's the
Well, there
only
you go.
thing.
Yes.
How daring or creative do you get when trying different flavors? Or like I got a pie down at there's a pie place in Akron that I got a pie at, and it was a peach Melba, and it had peach with raspberries, and then it had slivered almonds on it.
Oh, nice.
But I didn't like the almonds on it.
Did you not?
No, maybe if they were sliced slivers.
Yeah.
But I mean, are there certain flavors like blueberry and lemon seem to go well together?
And blueberry and peach does go really. Did you like the blueberry and peach part of it?
Well, this was peach and raspberry.
Oh, raspberry. Sorry. Yeah, that would be nice too. Yeah.
Is there like any strengths or how creative can you get? Like,
In the book itself, in both books, I've bought cookbooks that by authors, and I think like, oh, this all looks fabulous, and then I start reading it, and it's like, do I really want to eat this? Like, I'm not really, like, it's almost like they've deliberately tried to go out on the edge a bit with every recipe. And at the end, I think you write a book for the things that you like. I tend to like more traditional flavors. I do like Middle Eastern food. I love I love most things, but I didn't go too crazy for that reason, because I think you can always add things, I guess, but I wouldn't say there's anything in that book that is particularly
So,
like
Laura,
out there.
My absolute favorite kind of pie is actually elderberry and peach. Elderberries are hard to find
Yeah,
these days.
never
And they're a little more bitter than a raspberry or a blackberry or a
Right.
boysenberry. So you need something sweeter to kind of jazz it up. Otherwise, you're eating this bitter pie. So I always do elderberry and peach. And
That's
I
a
think
nice combination. Yeah,
I
you get a
think
bit of the sour
those
and sweet.
combinations usually, it's kind of like rhubarb. To me, I mean, I love rhubarb, but rhubarb also has that tartness
Yes.
where the strawberry kind of has that sweetness. They kind of balance each other.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And so I think you need to find, when you have one of those kinds of fruits or whatever, you need that balance.
For sure. Yeah, I never see elderberries.
Oh, my favorite.
I know. Yeah, I'd like to try them. We just don't see them. We get a lot of sour cherries, which is my favorite pie of all time.
Well,
I adore
I would argue that's my
Ooh.
second favorite
Is it?
kind. And somebody was from Michigan or was touting Michigan cherries. There is nothing in the world like a sour cherry pie from Michigan or my grandmother. And my grandmother always put almond flavoring,
Yes.
almond extract,
almond extract. Yeah,
in
I
with
do
the
as well.
sour cherry pies.
Yeah.
And it's to die for.
It just gives it a little bit of a zing. I think people avoid it because they think it's like super sour, and it's not.
It's not.
It's just fabulous. Yes.
My panic is rolling out dough.
Okay.
I love to do pies, but I have anxiety attacks.
PTSD from rolling.
To roll this out.
Yeah, so it's always a good idea to have a surface below you. So I use those just those pie mats. You know, the very easy. They have the picture, like all the outlines of the different sizes that you can roll your pie out to. So those are really helpful. Don't be afraid of flour. Like some people think like, oh, if I add flour, it's going to get, to put down like a thin layer of flour. Make sure you put flour on your pin, like your rolling pin, not just on the thing. And if it starts to stick to your roller or you're noticing that it's not rolling out, it's because you haven't moved it around enough. Like you've just kind of kept rolling, right? So what happens is then it starts to melt a little and it sticks to your surface, and then you're like trying to move it and then it rips and everybody starts crying. So if it does stick and you've got it on some kind of surface, whether it's parchment or, a pie mat, just slide it onto a cookie sheet and put it in the fridge for 5 minutes. Like you will be amazed at the difference it makes.
I would have
Yeah.
never thought of that.
Oh my God, you're saved. Like honestly, just doing that little bit, then you can get a knife under there, and sometimes you can even put your hand under, or throw it in the freezer.
Do you fold it?
Nope, just stick it on.
How many of you fold your crusts? Nobody folds your crusts. Yeah, I roll mine and then I fold it and then I put it in the crust.
I roll it over the rolling pin. There's so many different ways to do it. So the main thing is keep. Oh, I lost that again.
Here, press on the bottom. Here.
Technologically challenged. Okay, there. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I probably just turned it off as I was waving around. Yeah, you can, you can roll it up on your pin, you can fold it, but just kind of try and keep your hands off of it. But for the rolling out part, for sure, just put it in the fridge and then bring it back out. But if you're rolling pie dough and it's not sliding around on the mat, it's sticking to the mat. So that's a no-no. So roll it up on your rolling pin, put down a little bit more flour, and then continue rolling. Your pie dough should continue to move outwards. If it's not moving, it's stuck. It's not just me.
Stuff.
Yes.
What kind of rolling pin? And the reason I ask this is I have a wooden one. I have a plastic one that was my mother-in-law's that unscrews. And when she would make pies, she would put ice cubes in this plastic rolling pin. I have a stainless steel rolling pin.
The cold.
The other side of the family.
I don't know. I just roll a pie.
I've always just used a wooden rolling pin. Like if it's got ball bearings in it and you do this and it spins fast, that's good. Like don't buy the super cheap ones that don't tend to move, the rolling pins. You can certainly, that sounds interesting with the ice. I just don't know if it's necessary. It's not like you're spending an hour doing this. It's taking you probably 5-10 minutes, right? So nothing's going to warm up too much. You hopefully have let your pie dough rest. That's the other part. Does anybody know why we let it rest? Everybody rests their pie dough, but nobody ever understands why. It's again because of the glutens. When you're making that pie dough, even though you've kept your hands off it, you can't help. You want gluten, a little bit of gluten in your pie dough, because that's what holds it together. If there was no gluten, the thing would just fall apart. So there's always going to be some gluten, and just by the process of spinning something, you've created a bit of that. So you rest pie dough so those glutens relax. Similar, like when you're making pizza dough, or you have pizza dough and you're trying to spread it out and it keeps bouncing back when you're trying to widen it. If you walk away from that for 10 minutes and come back, it's a whole different pizza dough. It'll just spread beautifully because the gluten has relaxed in it. So just give it some time. If all else fails, put everything in the fridge when you don't know what else to do. The refrigerator heals everything. So I would say, yeah, just get yourself a wooden rolling pin for sure. Oh, can I just get this later?
Your small pies, a tart, do you use the same dough for tarts that you would for a pie? Or
Yeah, I think there's 4 recipes for pie doughs in that book, and then there's also phyllo, and which I'm like, don't bother making your own phyllo. There's so many good phyllo pie dough that you can buy, and it's a real pain to try and make. There's a rough puff for puff pastry recipe, but again, if you can find butter puff pastry, buy it and use that. Again, it saves you a lot of time. But yes, there's like you can use a sweet a pastry dough for the tarts. It kind of depends. The one that's in there, which is the all butter pie dough, I use for so much because it's just a really dependable workhorse. It doesn't rip or tear. It doesn't it's very, very easy to use and to roll. So that's my go-to for sure. Did you have a follow-up? Yeah, do that. If you're making pie dough, why not make 2 or make 4 discs? And just again, turn them into a disc. Again, it's not a snowball. You don't want to handle it too much. You just want to make it into a disc or a ball shape and then smush it down with your hand so it's a disc. The reason we make it a disc is so that when you start to roll, you've already got the basic shape. If you're going to make a square pie, then make it into a square. Make it into whatever shape you ultimately want it to be. But if you've ever tried to take a piece of square Pillsbury dough and make it into a circle, it can be a bit of and make it into a round, it can be a bit of a challenge. So, and then again, just the old double wrap, put the date on it, easily 3 months. Again, I go 6, and nothing's going to happen to it. It's frozen, unless your freezer breaks down. But I mean, it's pretty dependable. So I think I've shared all my tips.
Other questions?
mention that dark thing at the top of the crust before you bake it. I always use a tablespoon of milk and a teaspoon of brown sugar. And then with my fingers, just rub it over.
You rub it. Oh, dang.
Yeah, my mom always did that, so I just always did it.
And does it give you a nice browning? Yeah. Yeah, that's why I have just a table. I put in a tablespoon of sugar. This is for 2 discs in the pie dough because people think, oh, you want to make it sweeter, but it's really for the browning. So sugar does have a nice browning element. I say, I'm going to try that too. You steal all these ideas. Yeah, for any kind of wash, you can certainly do that. You can use just a whole egg with a little bit of hot water. Just whisk it together. And if you've got a big surface to cover, have you ever used egg wash and it still has I can never remember what it's called, but it's the stringy stuff in an egg, and then it kind of streaks across your pie. If you just run it, whisk it together and then run it through a sieve, you end up with this really beautiful egg wash will wash the pie really nice and evenly. So it's another little, use your sieves.
There's another question in the back.
Yes.
Question, if you wanted to make like individual chicken pot pies, almost like hand pies,
Yes.
and freeze them, is there anything you need to do to keep that from getting too soggy?
No, because if you cool down your filling, right, before you put it in the shell, so it starts to thicken anyway. I don't find, have you had a problem with chicken pies being soggy?
No, but I want to make little ones, and I've been a little hesitant to try it.
No, do it. Yeah, no, it'll be fine because the mixture is going to thicken as it cools anyway. So by the time you put it in the shell, especially if you've cooled it in the refrigerator, it thickens up. Then you shouldn't have a problem with that at all. And you get little mini chicken pies are delish. People don't fight over the seconds. Yes.
This is a very different question. One of my favorite Broadway shows is Waitress.
Oh yes. Yeah, I know. I love that show.
It just makes me feel good seeing her make all those.
I know. It's such a great, and just that song. Yeah, I agree. I know that. I think that helped bring pies back to the forefront. Pies is definitely having its moment.
Well, do you think there are trends in pies? I mean, the reason I ask is during the Depression, everybody had vinegar pies or buttermilk pies or
Yeah.
chess pies. I'm sure there are others, but I can't think.
Yeah, but the
Molasses
chess pies
pie.
definitely
Um,
very simple ingredients.
But I see more and more people now getting buttermilk pie,
Yeah.
which I grew up making buttermilk pie. So, do you think pies go in cycles or trends?
I think so. I think it's one of the reasons they let me write this book is publishers recognize that the economy isn't great. Food costs are huge. Like to buy, butter is insane in Canada, the price of butter. So it's when you make something small, you're making it just for 2 to 4 people. You don't have those leftovers in the fridge that might tempt you or turn moldy and then you feel bad because you've wasted. So it's kind of the idea of less waste and a smaller amounts of ingredients. Like even when we were shooting the book, making things, I was like, it took a quarter of the time that it took to make things for pie style. And that's not only because of the decoration, but just it's much bigger. It's more, it's so much more expensive now to make a full pie. And you don't necessarily always want a whole pie, To eat a whole pie takes, well, I'm going to say 6 people, but and you're still going to have leftovers, but maybe not. Some of us could do better than that. But I think, it's just the idea of giving yourself a treat without making a lot of something. To be able to make 2 or 4 little tarts, I think that's great. I'll eat all those.
Anything you can think of, is there anything you can think of that we shouldn't use when we make a pie? I mean, like they say, don't make pineapple jello with whatever, fresh pineapple doesn't go with jello. Is there anything you can think of that you can't put in a pie?
Not that I can think of. I'm just a proponent of kind of like don't have don't make recipes that have 1,000 ingredients unless you can see a really big difference. I don't see a big difference putting vodka in pie dough. I just don't. And that's something, there's a lot of things that come out now that people put into pies so their pies appear different from what there is out there already. But a really well-made simple pie is fabulous. I mean, don't mess with it. If you've got a great pie dough recipe and a great filling, you can experiment with things. But I can't think of anything you couldn't put up in there besides a poisonous fruit or something. Like that woman in Australia who put the death cap mushrooms in her beef Wellington. Maybe not that. Yes. No. And that's sort of, there's more of that certainly around now, right? I only do, I will still use Crisco, but I use it in combination with the butter, like a 2/3, 1/3, because that kind of gives you that nice balance of, you get the flakiness that you get from Crisco, which you can still get from butter for sure. But the flakiest pie dough that you're going to make with butter is the one that you're going to make by hand, unfortunately, because you can keep those really big chunks of butter. So those are the things that puff up in the oven. But you'll find when you make it in a food processor, it's still speckled with lots of pieces of butter. And that's kind of what you want to see. But it's a lot more manageable to roll out and to use. I run baking classes and people are always like, oh my God, I can cut this in strips, I can lattice, and it doesn't rip or tear. And it's just a really solid dough. Oh, one little tip about latticing. People go crazy doing that because if they're doing a blueberry pie and they're trying to lattice on the pie and all the blueberry gets on this lattice and then it's a disaster, lattice off the pie. take your pieces, make all your lattice, put it in the fridge again for about 15 minutes, just until it gets a little hard. Put it on a piece of parchment, lattice it, like create your lattice, just you can draw the outline of your pie if you want. Lattice it, then throw it in the freezer for about 10 minutes, and it comes out like a Frisbee. So you can literally like pick the whole piece of lattice up, and then you just put it on your pie, and it still can slide around a bit, so you can, if it's not completely straight, and you don't then get any of that kind of messiness, and you can create a really nice, even lattice if that's important to you. Yes. I recommend unsalted, but I noticed like in Toronto they put salted butter on sale, but not unsalted, which drives me crazy, right? So the only reason I use unsalted is because if you use unsalted, then you know that the amount of salt in the recipe is correct, right? If you use salted, different butters have different salt contents. There's no standard there. So some are saltier than others. But if you know your butter, I would just say pick a salted butter that you know works, but then leave the extra salt out. But that's why you see unsalted butter in everything, in cookies and everything. It's because it allows you to control the salt. But if you've got a really good salted butter that's light, you don't have to go out and buy unsalted butter. Just use that. There's no difference in the quality of it or the texture. It just tends to last longer. Yes, I see a hand way back there. There you are. The what pie, sorry? Oh, yes. The whole thing. All my pies I put in at 425 on that heated piece of parchment, or heated, cookie sheet. So it goes in at 425 just for 10 minutes, because it's essentially doing what it's doing to the bottom of the pie. It's just setting the pie dough, so now it doesn't shrink, right? And it doesn't start to melt. So it zaps it with heat for 10 minutes, and then I drop it to 350. And then bake it for about an hour. And that tends to give you also a nice browning, a nice even browning. 400's high. I would worry with some of the fruit too that it would start to just pulverize it. You'd end up. Yeah, I would think all the way through, because you're going to end up with the pie dough is going to be cooked and nicely browned, but maybe you're filling it, depending on what apples you're using, maybe they're not ready. So, yeah.
Have you ever done camper pies? Do you know what camper pies
No.
are?
What are camper pies? I'm intrigued.
So they make these little, what do they call them? Waffle? Yeah, thank you. What do you call those things? Pie iron. That's what I was going to say. I wasn't sure. You get these pie irons and you butter them or shortening them, and then you put some kind of a crust on either one of them.
Right.
Sometimes it's bread, sometimes it's like Pillsbury pastry, whatever. And then you put your filling there, you close them, you seal them, and you put them in a hot fire. So you have like a camper pie is what we call them. And there are all sorts of different fillings. You can do a pizza pie, you can do a... Exactly.
And does it actually bake it properly, like the pie dough? Is it actually?
It depends on the fire.
I know, that's it.
I think it can.
Yeah.
It can, because you're putting, I was taught to put them in the coals and keep them in the coals for a period of time.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if you had any insights about camper pies.
Those are people who really love pie. They go camping and still need their pie.
Well, some people do it with bread. Some people do it with pizza dough. It's all different varieties. So I thought I'd ask an opinion about that. What do you? Always bread. I've done it with Pillsbury rolls dough, and I've done it with bread. I've never done it with pie dough per se.
Yeah,
And I've had them in. I've had fruity ones. I've had meaty ones.
Are they delicious?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Um,
Sound good.
grilled cheese. There's another one.
Everything tastes better.
True.
You can be too.
Do we have any other pressing pie questions? Now, okay, go ahead.
Yes.
The silicone one will get extremely hot.
Yeah. just one whole piece, right? So you can just drop it on the pie and it holds. The silicone ones drive me crazy too, because you're trying to tighten it,
Yeah.
and then the whole thing falls off the pie, and then you're putting it back on, and you're right, you burn your hands. And yet I still use it. Because I'm convinced I'm doing it wrong. But no, you know what, sometimes I end up doing, I like those metal ones, the solid metal, they're just from a storage standpoint. You know, I guess you just put them up with your cookie sheets. Tin foil is another pain, because if you've got a convection oven, you put on the tin foil and then the fan blows it off. So I'd say the metal would be my kind of first choice, is kind of the one I tend to go to. I just like the depth of the silicone ones, right? The metal ones tend to be rather thin, so sometimes they don't cover your whole pie. And they're always a size, so if you're making a 9-inch pie, then they don't cover if it's an 8-inch circle. But
I also have the, probably 90-degree curve. I bought those at Heinen's years back. There's like 4 or 5 of them.
Right.
You lay them on, and then one will fall off.
This is all the fun things that happen when you make pie. This is why we tell them to behave themselves. Because they don't always behave themselves.
So here is your homework. I want you all to enjoy a piece of pie today. Now, whether you make it or purchase it, I don't much care. But let's celebrate pie and all have a piece of pie today. And let's thank this wonderful pie chef from Canada. I will remind you, the Learned Owl is in the back with her book. She will be up here signing. The library also purchased some, so you can check some out if you want. I think they're still, if they haven't been checked out already.
And I'm on Instagram, so if you have any questions, just send me a DM. I'm happy to answer if you come up with something we haven't addressed.
Thank you all for coming.